This is a quick overview on how to play one deck dungeon. First, we'll remind you of the cards. We've got the encounter cards, the staircase card, the dungeon cards, the character cards, skill cards, the turn reference card, and the basic skills. The basic skills are not used except for in the campaign. So the first thing that we'll do is select a character. Notice that the characters have one player and two player options. The next thing that you'll need to do is to select your dungeon. Notice that if you look very carefully, there's a little different coloring in the titles that represent the levels. Also on the right side of the title is a number of dots, 1, 2, or 3, that also represents the level. The Dragon's Cave is the easiest dungeon. The turn reference card tells you the basics of how to play encounters in the dungeon. On the back of it, it tells you how to do the boss fight. Once you have selected the dungeon, place it underneath the turn reference card such that only the first level is showing. Organize your level cards from the lowest level to the highest level, with the lowest level on top, and make sure that you have the correct number of players. Now take all of your encounter cards, shuffle them together with the door having that V shape on the bottom, and place them on top of the stairs. Notice that your character card has a number of colored weapons on the side, like swords or feet or this blue symbol, and those represent the dice that you can roll. You can roll up to 2 yellow dice for this character, or 3 pink, or 2 blue. In addition, you have the hearts that represent the character's health. Go ahead and get out the dice associated to your character. So for example, this case, 2 yellow, 3 pink, and 2 blue. That forms the pool of dice for your character. In addition, you have to decide about the health. You can add the health to the character as they lose health or they accumulate damage. I like to take the hearts representing health and put them on the character, and when they take damage, remove a heart. It's just easier to deal with that way, in my opinion. On your turn reference card, notice that you have potions, and when you start out in the beginning, you place 1 token on top of the reference card to represent that you have 1 potion left. Notice that the skill level card shows you that you have 1 potion during setup. The skill level card also shows you the number of experience points that you need in order to level up, and if you have an encounter bonus. We'll talk about that later. Now you're ready to begin your adventure. Your turn reference card shows you that at the start of each turn you need to spend 2 time in order to begin the turn. So you take the cards and flip them over 1 at a time, and that's what it means by using up time. Now you have the option to either explore or enter a room. On your first turn, there are no rooms to enter, so the only thing that you can do is explore. And when you do that, you take cards off the top of the deck and you place them down to fill up to 4 locations. So here we have the 4 locations that we can then enter. So that's the only thing that we can do during the first turn. So now that the first turn is over, we again have to spend 2 more time. 1, 2, and now we can enter a room. So I flip over a card. It will either be a combat encounter or a peril encounter. So I have to decide whether I want to try this encounter or whether I want to flee. So I can always choose to flee. If I flee, then my turn is done. So we go to the next turn. Again, flipping over more time, and then opening the door to enter a room. Once a door is opened, you can come back to it and enter a room later on, but if you enter a room when the door is already opened, you must encounter that. You cannot discard any rooms until they are encountered. When you encounter a room, you will always claim the loot, but you may suffer consequences if you don't fully match the challenge. Notice that combat encounters have crossed swords at the top. The peril encounter has what looks like a bear trap at the top. On the right hand of your turn reference in the dungeon, you'll see up above, you'll see the cross swords for the combat encounter and the bear trap looking symbol for the peril encounter. For a combat encounter, you roll all of your dice and then you try to match them based upon the color. In addition, you must also fill out the block on the combat encounter in your dungeon. For peril encounters, there's always an easier and a more difficult route. The easier one, you have to expend more time in order to take that route. Notice that on each hero card, there's a skill at the bottom, a free skill, noticed by the circular purple arrows there, and also there is a heroic feat. A heroic feat is typically you can spend time in order to get black die. The black die are a wild card type and can be used to match anything. You can also convert your die of any color die into a black die using the lowest value. In addition, you can use your potions during your combat or during your dungeon exploration. Any boxes that have a shield symbol must be filled in first before the other boxes are filled in. So let's walk through a combat example. Here we'll be fighting the skeleton, which gives you 2 experience points, a magic potion, or it will give you an agility item. We're fighting with the archer and decide to use the heroic feat. So that requires that we spend 2 time to roll 2 die, or 4 time to roll 3 and throw out the lowest. So let's use 2 time and roll 2 black die. We can then roll all of our other die. We must now use the die to fill out the 3 in the dungeon and all of these boxes on the enemy. The blue 4 and 2 have shields on them, so we must fill in those first. We don't have a 4, but we do have a 6. It must equal or be greater than the box we're trying to fill, so we place a 6 on the 4. We don't have a blue 2, but we do have black die. So the main essence of the game is figuring out, do I want to convert some die? How do I want to arrange my die to fill in as many boxes as possible? So for the sake of the discussion, let's assume that we could fill in the box associated with the dungeon and most of the boxes associated with the skeleton. In this particular case, we see Undying. It says if any boxes are empty, spend 2 time. So we have at least 2 boxes, so we need to spend 2 time associated with that. In addition, we have a 6 here that we need to spend 2 time, and then a 5, which has 1 time and 1 heart. So here we would spend 2, 3, 4, 5 time and 1 heart. However, we also have on the skill for the archer, if you would lose only 1 heart, spend a time instead. So in this case, we can either spend 5 time and lose 1 health, or we can lose 6 time. Once we have applied all the consequences, we can now gain the loot. We can use this for an item, or a potion, or for experience points. In this case, it could be a skill or a potion here. If it's a skill, you put it underneath the character. If it's a potion, you put it underneath your turn reference card. If you decide to keep the potion, you put it under the turn reference card, and you also add a token for this potion that you have learned. If you decide to add it as an item to your character, just place it underneath there, and now you can use an extra die associated with that type. Notice, however, that each level has limits on the number of items and the number of skills that you can use. If you decide to use the loot as experience points, you can just put it to the side underneath your skill levels. Even though the game is designed to put the cards underneath each other, and it looks really nice, sometimes it's a little challenging because they move around and things like that. So alternatively, you can just put them to the side, and as you gain new skills, just lay them on top. The peril encounter is just like the combat encounter, except you need to choose which path that you wish to take, and you can only use the die associated with the color of the path. For example, in this case, we're talking either pink or yellow. So continue all of your encounters until you come close to the bottom of the deck, where you're close to the stairs. When you gain enough experience points to level up to the next level, discard the experience cards and the level card. And now follow the instructions described on the level card. In this case, you have 3 items and 3 skills is your limit, plus you get 1 extra potion for reaching level 2. You also get 1 black encounter bonus. That means that you can roll 1 black die every turn. When you get near the bottom of the encounter deck, you will eventually hit the stairs. When you reach the stairs, it means that you're ready to descend to the next level. You can descend whenever you want, but whenever you need to spend time, you don't have any cards left, so you need to put a damage on the stair. When you achieve a total of 3 damage, then you remove those damage and apply 1 of the damages to your character. When you decide to descend, you shuffle the encounter cards and place them on top of the stairs, and then you move your turn reference down 1 level. So now whenever you encounter enemies in the dungeon, you have to fill the boxes associated with the first level and the second level. Once you've completed the 3rd level, you flip over the card and now you encounter the boss. Fighting the boss is the same as fighting other enemies, except you cannot use the heroic feat. Notice that there is a skull kind of looking with a red X on it. That means you cannot use the heroic feat. And whenever you fill a box that has a skull on it, that results in 1 damage to the boss. Notice black die cannot be placed on any box that has a skull in it. So in this case, we notice we have some boxes that have a skull and a heart. So not filling in this box means the enemy does not take a hit, and the hero also suffers 1 health damage. Okay, so that's a quick run through of One Deck Dungeon. Have fun!